Hello and welcome to the Now We Know Show, the show where we discuss a topic of interest, and by the end we will have learnt something new, and hopefully you will too. I'm Buzz.
I'm Zach.
And I'm Jack.
And this week's topic, we're going to be raising the dead.
Ooh.
And talking about zombies.
Zombie.
Yes, everybody's favourite subject, zombies. But first I think we should go straight over to the computer and ask the computer about zombies. So, computer, what is a zombie?
According to Wikipedia, a zombie is a mythological undead corporeal revenant created through the reanimation of a corpse. Zombies are most commonly found in horror and fantasy genre works. The term comes from Haitian folklore, in which a zombie is a dead body reanimated through various methods, most commonly magic like voodoo.
So there we go. That's the computer's take on what a zombie is.
Yes, that is the computer's definition. Obviously,
I mean, it seemed pretty spot on, to be honest.
Yeah. There we go. Now we know.
Now we know. Right, that's the end of the podcast. We can all go home.
The unsung fourth member of the Now We Know show team is the computer.
It's the computer, yeah.
Has all the information.
So maybe we should start off by... I mean, obviously we want to go right from the start when it comes to the zombies, where zombies come from, etc. But what brought this subject up as a good topic to discuss on our podcast is that I think everybody, I mean, I'm sure you have, everybody at some point has had a conversation about zombies.
Yeah.
Or watched a zombie film.
Yeah. It could be a coffee break at work around the coffee machine. You know, it could be down the pub having a beer just after watching the latest zombie film, as you say. Yes. Everybody says... So what would you do in a zombie apocalypse?
Yeah. What's your plan?
What's your plan? In fact, you've just reminded me, a good friend of mine that I've known for years, completely out of the blue, one day, he asked me a similar question. So what would you do in a zombie apocalypse? And as we discussed it, it suddenly occurred to me from what he was telling me, he'd got his whole plan.
Yeah.
You know, he'd already scoped out the best buildings in the local area to fortify. Where he could get weapons from local hardware stores.
Very thorough.
He was very, very thorough. So obviously I think people do discuss this subject quite a lot, you know. And obviously it's a very popular subject when it comes to film and TV, you know.
There's so many different programs, films,
and it
video games.
And it keeps on coming. Very popular. So let's find out, shall we? Let's find out some information which hopefully from our research we can teach each other some things, and the listeners will.
So where should we start?
Well, Jack.
I actually have looked into the origin of the word zombie. So we
Excellent.
should start right at the beginning.
Okay, right at the beginning.
So the word zombie, as we know it, ZOMBIE, comes from a collection of West African words, and obviously, as the computer said, they kind of the idea of a zombie kind of came from voodoo and things in West Africa. So the following words have all played a part in the creation of the word zombie. The word Nzambi, starting with an N, Nzambi meaning God, and Zumbi with a U, and Nzumbi, which means fetish come from the Congo.
Right.
Okay.
So we've headed out of Africa, across the Atlantic to Haiti.
So another word that has contributed to creating the word zombie is Mvumbi, I think is how you pronounce it, Mvumbie, which means a corpse that still keeps its soul, which is kind of what we expect from a traditional zombie, as a walking corpse.
Yeah. I mean,
so Mvumbi is where that comes from. Nvumvi, I'm sorry if I pronounce any of these wrong, is also similar in that it means a body without a soul. So it's kind of almost the opposite, but you can see where this word's kind of generating from. When these words came over from West Africa, along with voodoo traditions, elements were taken, so as language does, developed into what we now call a zombie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from my bit of research about it, from obviously zombie, we all look at zombies as being a kind of a will-less and speechless human, as in voodoo belief and in fictional stories, and held to have died and been supernaturally reanimated. The supernatural power that, according to voodoo belief, may enter into and reanimate a body, and a person held to resemble the so-called walking dead, like an automaton.
Yeah, because it's kind of interesting because it's kind of, to a degree, from what I've found, that it's kind of voodoo side of things. It's kind of like a form of hypnosis.
In some cases, there is kind of a hypnotic element to it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we've had the description now of where the word comes from, and it's obviously very deep-rooted into the voodoo culture.
Well, both of our definitions so far have already kind of delved into the West African kind of voodoo side of things, which is something I didn't really know, to be honest, before looking into this subject. I always thought zombies were kind of before George A. Romero. I didn't think there was very much to do.
Again, a little reference I got was, according to the Merriam-Webber dictionary, the word comes from the Louisiana Creole and Haitian Creole word of zombie, with a Z-O-N-B-I. Did you have that one down? And is as kin is kin to the Kimbundu term Nuzumbi, which you did have.
Nuzumbi,
which means ghost. That's what this one has down.
So it's kind of so it's kind of following the same line through both, but slightly different variations of the same word.
It's interesting because the idea of a zombie nowadays has developed from this kind of idea that they're going to eat you. Kind of consume flesh.
I think it's
and
fair
you become
to
a
say.
zombie.
I think it's, I mean, we're talking, where that kind of folklore enters in, probably more into the movie genre.
Yeah.
Whereas in the folklore side of it, it's really, you're just creating a worker, a soulless.
Because you do hear the word zombie kind of thrown about for people that are a bit kind of brain dead.
Or somebody,
they're a zombie.
or somebody just like follows orders.
Follows
orders without question.
Yeah.
I think that's probably
a slave.
The root of maybe reanimating a dead body to become a zombie, so that whoever has reanimated it is using that individual as a
slave to do
what they want, rather than a rampaging
creature
that
you.
When they bite you, it transfers the zombification onto the next person. I think in the first instance it would have just been the idea of these ghost-like reanimated dead bodies.
It's interesting to see that in this case that there are a couple of films that do actually reference or use that instead of eating people.
It's interesting you talk about like the fear of them eating you. It's kind of
that's kind of came later.
They've become kind of monsters in sort of Halloween tradition. But sort of obviously that's come from somewhere. What civilization in history do you think were the first to fear zombies? Because I've been looking into it and I was quite surprised. What would you say was the first civilization to kind of be thought to have feared what we now know as a zombie?
Off the top of my head,
Egyptian civilization.
Egyptian would come to mind because of mummification, but then I always presumed that, or assumed that mummification is not solely down to the Egyptians. South Americans use loads of cultures have used mummification, but I thought that was kind of trying to preserve somebody so that they travel into the afterlife. More like in modern sci-fi terms, you're putting them into stasis,
right?
In order for them to transcend
with all their possessions.
With all their possessions and everything. Not so much as you're trying to turn them into The Walking Dead. So I don't know. Let's see. I would have thought that a lot of cultures would have had folklore regarding the dead coming back. I mean, that's quite a scary thing for people to think that I don't know. I'm just going to take
a wild punt.
I'm going to say North American Indians.
Okay, so what you said India.
I said Egypt.
Egyptians, yeah. So actually, one of the first civilizations thought to fear zombies was the ancient Greeks.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Archaeologists have found evidence in Greek graves, and they found rocks or weighty objects pin down many of the skeletons or the people that have died. And this was so it's generally believed that the ancient Greeks were some of the first to fear the actual reanimation of corpses. So basically, if someone died, they would weigh them down underwater with rocks and heavy objects to stop them from reanimating, which I thought was really interesting.
If only they had thought of tying their shoelaces together.
Yes.
Did they have shoelaces back then?
Well, they had sandals, but you know.
Tie some rope
Yeah,
round.
tie some rope round.
Early shoelaces.
So I just thought it was interesting that the Greeks would pin down their corpses
I've
in
not
the
heard of
graves.
that. I've certainly not heard that, so I've learned something.
Yes, as a thought. Well, they thought that obviously they might come back. And
yeah, that's interesting because I've heard of that, but not in reference to zombies.
Yeah, I wonder if that's got anything to do with. There's a medical condition, isn't there? And I can't think of off the top of my head what it's called, where people can go into kind of a
catatonic state.
Catatonic state, and I know that in the Victorian age, people used to be really scared of being buried alive.
Yeah.
Because if they went into this catatonic state, then there were stories about people trying to claw their way out of their coffins and things, and they actually made coffins with glass windows in, and even coffins that had a string going to a bell.
To the bell,
you
I've
could
heard
ring
of
the
that.
bell.
Yeah.
I wonder if, going back to your weighting them down, maybe there were cases where people had presumed to have died.
Yeah.
And actually had been in that medical condition and hence come back to life.
Yeah.
That absolutely terrorised people and thought, no. And of course, if you're terrorised because your family members suddenly, come back to life.
Uncle Jeff's come back to life.
And so you've taken your nearest, weapon or spear or whatever to dispatch them before they have a chance to say, well, I'm fine, I'm fine, I've just woken up.
He's a zombie, kill him.
Kill him,
That's what a zombie would say.
That's what a zombie would say. And that's it. Next time, weight them down. That's it.
Yeah, possibly. That could possibly be a good reason.
Yeah,
for
because sometimes you do get myths which are based on some truth. Yeah, there's a little bit of truth in every myth and legend, I dare say. So, that's interesting. I didn't know about the Greeks.
Yeah.
So when it comes to zombies, have you managed to find any research about actual cases?
I haven't, but I do know of and have heard in the past of kind of stories of people thought to be dead and being reanimated and seen possibly several years after they've died. So,
cool.
Well, I found a little bit of research that said in 1997 there was a study paper that was published by the Lancet where they analysed the cases of 3 individuals from Haiti whose communities had identified them as zombies. One was a 30-year-old woman who had allegedly quickly died after having fallen ill. Her family recognised her walking about as a zombie 3 years after the event. Another was a young man who had died at 18 and re-emerged after another 18 years at a cockfight of all things.
A cockfight?
Yeah. The final study concerned another woman who had died at 18 but was spotted again as a zombie 13 years after this event.
Right, several years. I was surprised that
so
there's
there's a
several
big
years.
year gaps between when these people...
You'd think it would be kind of sooner rather than later.
Also, as well, if someone's 18 years later, one of them said he was spotted, he'd look very different. But obviously they recognised him as...
You would have thought they're quite tight communities as well.
Yeah, so you'd recognise him as an 18-year-old zombie, but he'd obviously been... He was obviously into cockfighting, whatever the guy was.
Yes, it went on further to say, Dr. Duyon and Professor Littlewood examined the 3 zombies and found that they had not been the victims of evil spells. Instead, medical reasons could explain their zombification. So maybe that's going back to that catatonic state we were talking about. But still, that's a big gap in years if somebody is suddenly, certainly if they've been buried, must have been a shallow grave, managed to get themselves out and then wandered about not knowing.
Stayed hidden for that long.
Now,
I wonder if they had a canoe. That's topical, by the way.
Yes.
So, with these people, were they like in this kind of almost in this catatonic state, or were they like a rotting corpse?
I don't know. Well, it says here the first zombie had catatonic schizophrenia, a rare condition that makes the person act as though they are walking in a stupor. The second person had experienced brain damage and also had epilepsy, while the third appeared merely to have a learning disability.
So that's interesting if you take that and put it in the context that we were saying earlier of the ancient Greeks. If that same story happened to the ancient Greeks, that might be, as we say, a reason why they pinned them down in their graves, because obviously they'd come back, but obviously it was an undiagnosed illness that they had. and they just perceived it as coming back from the dead or being a zombie.
Oh, I wouldn't want to be that person.
No,
It's
so-
interesting how history kind of develops, though, because now we see zombies as what we see them as. Back in the day, they would have no idea. They
They'd
just
probably
would have...
treat them similar to
Yeah,
witchcraft and stuff.
Yeah, so if somebody did have a particular psychological
Disposition.
then you may well see if they were walking around or they've had an accident, and
Mm.
because people do, they get concussion and things.
Yeah.
If suddenly they got concussion, they're completely out cold, and you've got no medical experience.
You'd think they were dead.
You may think that they were dead. Several hours might go by, and then they come to again.
They
And
had...
not know, even maybe with a loss of memory.
Yeah.
Help,
not
I'm
know
buried alive.
who am I? Where am I? I don't know.
But back in the day, they would not have had the medical
No.
knowledge that they
Know-how.
have now. So,
But we are looking at it from the perspective of trying to explain it through medical terms.
yeah.
We mustn't forget that, of course, a lot of this is based, a zombie is based on that spiritual side, that
Voodoo. Yeah.
voodoo,
Magic. Voodoo,
magic,
voodoo.
yeah.
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 There are cases of zombification in nature.
Yes.
Was one other area I looked at.
I didn't think of that.
Reason I thought about that is because obviously, if anybody's seen that film, which is called The Girl with All the Gifts, which I worked on and
So did I.
and Zak worked on.
I've seen it.
Yeah, you've
Hey.
seen it.
That counts.
And anybody that's seen that film, they wouldn't have realised it, but they've seen I was running around attacking people as so-called, I'm going to say zombies in brackets
Don't
because
say the Z word.
we weren't allowed on
We're not
set.
saying
We
the
weren't
Z word.
we weren't allowed to
You
call.
got that
We
reference.
weren't allowed, even though we were doing zombie boot camp at the time, we weren't allowed to actually call ourselves zombies because anybody that's seen that movie, they're actually referred to as hungries. That was their take on it.
It's
but the-
interesting. Sorry, the book that film's based on is actually set around this area.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Literally, where we, the three of us are sitting here in the studio, in the Zak Wylde Productions studio, not far from us, we have RAF Henlow, and that is the Air Force base that's featured. I mean, obviously it's in the book, but that's the one that's no place names were given in the film.
It tends to be kind of around London, doesn't it?
Yeah, but in the book it starts at RAF Henlow, moves over to Shefford, which is a small village near us, then over to, in fact, your village
Yes.
of
Stotfold, yeah.
and then moves down to, I believe, Old Stevenage down the A1, and then down into London is the sort of
What a weird coincidence.
which we could do, which actually when we worked on that for about a week, didn't we? We were on that shoot because we
Yeah.
did the initial part at the Air Force base,
Yes.
and also my wife Tina was involved, so we were a family group, and it was just an added bonus that not only we became known as the Hungry Family, but it's more than also the fact that we were actually a family from the exact area that would have been affected in that zombie outbreak.
Completely by
By
coincidence.
coincidence. It was crazy.
Like a little
But it was a
Easter
great
egg,
time. But the reason I bring that up is because that particular movie was based on the real science that where there is a fungus that does affect different insects in the Amazon jungle. I believe it's the Amazon jungle. It might be other places around the planet. But the fact is that particular fungus infects an ant, for example. The spores infect the ant and then take control of its motor functions.
Right.
It makes the ant climb up. So if you imagine on the forest floor, you've got an ant's nest, ant's hill. Then this particular fungus literally forces the ant to climb up above the nest and grip onto a twig or stick that's over the top of the nest. And then these spores grow within the ant and then erupt from its back into like these mushrooms.
Wow.
God.
And then they cascade spores down onto the ant nest, and that affects the rest of the ants, which then go off and do the same thing, and that's how it spreads itself. And I'm just trying to see through my notes.
Damn nature, you're scary.
Yeah, because there's always this idea that nature's kind of presented as a nice, happy thing.
Yeah, it's a war zone.
With little bunnies running around, enjoying themselves, eating carrots.
Ophicordyceps. I'm probably not
Was it
pronouncing it.
Philornis cordyceps?
Cordyceps, yeah. It's a genus of fungus that has more than 200 species.
Jeez.
and people are finding more and more all the time. Many of these fungus can be dangerous, and they often become toxic to animals. But yeah, it's that particular type of fungus actually does create zombification within those species, and I do believe that they are specific there. Each one of the fungi strains only affect a particular insect.
And that's what is actually featured in the movie.
Yeah, in the
isn't it?
movie, they've kind of jumped. They've said, that fungal infection has, and then it doesn't get explained in the book either, but it's jumped into the human.
It's evolved to a human level.
It's jumped species. So when that fungus affects human beings, they become infected with this fungal cordyceps, and then they themselves pass it on, obviously zombie genre, by biting people, and then they infect others, and so the fungus spreads.
And didn't they gather in kind of like tall places over
Yeah, I
buildings
mean
and
that
stuff?
was one of the things we had to do, didn't we? We had to stand there, and when there's no humans around for them to spread the fungus to, they literally stand in groups, slowly swaying, if you imagine like grass in the wind, just swaying, but they react to sound. As soon as they hear a sound,
so they
focus,
react to a stimuli.
Yeah, the sound. They suddenly focus straight on that sound and literally hack it to wherever that sound is, until they spot what's created the sound. And
Yeah, because that's interesting. Because another instance similar to that where they react to sound, but instead it's sound. Yeah, it is. That's in Train to Busan. They're completely blind. They just react to.
Yeah, so
sound.
you've
the Descent as well.
So
but they're not zombies.
Yeah. Well, so what we've learnt now is so far as we learnt the where the word zombie comes from, its origins. I love the information about the ancient Greeks.
Yeah.
So obviously it's been something that's been around for thousands of years. The whole concept of the dead returning, and the fact that in nature, although it's not been proven with humans exactly, and obviously that case file that I read out was specifically kind of explained through maybe people having psychological conditions, etc. So I've not come across any actual
scientific reasons.
Or cases of the Walking Dead, so to speak.
Right,
but we do know,
and let's hope that continues.
but we do know that in nature it happens.
Yes,
that you can take a creature and other, in this case, fungus can take control of that creature.
Yeah,
and literally make it into the Walking Dead, if you like.
So it's interesting. We've obviously covered that basis of what a zombie is and what a zombie can do. We then kind of go into the more modern side of things, which is obviously the movies and the survival side of things, which you have.
Yeah, I'm gonna if I may, I'm gonna dive to my Bible.
Yes.
Of the Ladybird book of the zombie apocalypse, because I love this. If anybody's got the Ladybird book of zombie apocalypse, it's hilarious. I'm just going to read this little bit out. It says, when it comes to zombies, it could be secret military experiments or a viral pandemic. It might be cosmic rays or reading some Latin-style words aloud from a forbidden codex. It could even be a fungal infection like athlete's foot. But one that explodes mushrooms through your face and makes you eat everybody. So there are many ways for people to turn into zombies. so we've been warned.
Yes.
We've been warned. And I think that pretty much sums up what we've spoken about already. So, and I want to take you back to this, that it's just such a fascinating subject. Zombies, people always talk about it. People, what would you do in a zombie apocalypse? So I think, we've discovered the origins. We've briefly spoken about, and anybody listening, if you've got any actual case files of people coming back from the dead, please make comments.
Or if you're a zombie out there and you want to
want to tell us more about it, I don't know if I want to have an actual zombie come into the studio.
Could we have some restraints?
Yeah, could have some restraints. And we found out that obviously zombification in nature. So let's crack on. Zombies in pop culture as we go from, because I know you guys are particularly up on your zombie movies. So when we're coming in there right at the beginning, when zombie movies start to make this genre.
So some of the early ones were...
a famous name for a start is George A. Romero. He was I think he's known as the king of zombie films. Or
Of what our modern idea of what a
Yeah.
zombie is. Yeah.
that was kind of the 60s, kind of early 70s that he was kind of prolific in making.
What's the earliest kind of zombie movie? For me,
The
I'm thinking Hammer horror.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
was there earlier ones
That
than
was
that?
just before Night of the Living Dead, Plague of the Zombies came out.
Right. So
And that
because I'm thinking
from-
Hammer horror, which was it, Village of the it's not Village of the Damned. What's the Hammer
Plague
horror?
of the Zombies.
Plague of the Zombies. That's it.
Yeah, that was actually the first.
And they were actually using them to work in the mines,
Not eating people.
not eating people. They were being brought back from the dead to be used as slaves.
One interesting note on that is the fact that that's one of the first instances where they used decapitation to stop a zombie.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, according to a book,
Oh, more research. Excellent.
according to a book called The Undead 18th Century by Linda Troost,
Mhm.
zombies appeared in literature as far back as 1697
Blimey.
and were described as spirits or ghosts, which
Yeah, again, we've had the
Ghosts,
ghost reference again.
not cannibalistic fiends, which is what you've just
Mm.
mentioned. They arrived on the film scene around the same time as their monster peers, Frankenstein, Dracula, with the 1932 release of White Zombie.
Yeah.
So
And I think there's another one called I Walked with the Zombie.
Yeah, so about that sort of time, early 30s, we're starting to see more kind of
Right.
conventional.
interesting. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, as in Frankenstein's monster, because everybody gets that confused. They call Frankenstein's monster Frankenstein. But a friend of ours, Chaz Albrighton, if you're listening out there, you did send through a question about it, and he did say, does Frankenstein's monster classify as a zombie?
Ooh.
I think that's a good point for discussion.
Yeah, so let's kind of pull it back to our basic definition of a zombie and see if it matches Frankenstein.
Well,
Mm.
if you
So
talk,
my basic definition of a zombie would be a corpse said to be revived by witchcraft, especially in certain African or Caribbean religions.
Or by kind of like almost a virus or infection.
Yeah, like we've
Kind of
mentioned,
Almost rotting
with
corpse.
the
whether that
obviously,
be man-made or
nature.
Are they
nature.
slow and lumbering, or more modern ones kind of
Yeah.
are fast and running, climbing on the
I
walls?
would honestly say if you're putting that question out there, is Frankenstein's monster a zombie? Because obviously technically he's
a reanimated corpse
Reanimated
of some
corpse.
sort.
It's kind of
or
artificial.
corpses.
Yeah.
I'd say no, he isn't. I'd say no,
Right.
he isn't, because from my perspective, if you take Dr. Frankenstein and whatever techniques he used, he was basically salvaging body parts from dead people, but keeping them from
Preserved.
so they weren't rotting.
Yeah.
Put them all together, and then through the magic of electricity, that's
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
electricity, reanimates, puts life back
Yes.
into that those body parts. So the body parts haven't been allowed to go
And
necrotic
decay.
and decay.
Could you argue that he's giving an undead corpse a soul?
Well, that's a
Which
good
is what
point.
we
But
said earlier.
he puts a brain. So a fresh guy's died. He puts a fresh brain into the monster, reanimates it. But the thing with Frankenstein's monster, and why I don't see that Frankenstein's monster is a zombie as such. Firstly, it's not been reanimated through, as you said, voodoo,
Supernatural
supernatural
instances.
Magic.
You're led to believe he's been brought to life, not from using science. But the creature is not dead, is it? It's pumping blood through its system. It's alive.
Yeah.
It's not like a reanimated dead.
Isn't it a
Thing.
part of dead
It's
body?
been brought
Yeah,
back
but
to life.
It's back. It's come back to from a dead state to a live state. But the monster is alive,
Mm.
breathing, making
Instead of that,
making
yeah.
conscious decisions. If you chopped its arm off, it'd be spraying blood everywhere. It's not necrotic flesh that is somehow through magical means reanimated. If
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Right.
You see, so for me, I don't think that Frankenstein's monster, for me, doesn't classify as your atypical zombie.
Fair enough.
Well, I don't. Yeah, what's your feedback,
Well,
guys?
it's kind of the idea that a zombie is kind of the living dead. It's a walking corpse,
Yeah, it's
not
dead.
alive.
Necrotic flesh, which is
Through somehow
has movement.
has movement.
And another point: if Frankenstein bit you, you wouldn't turn into a zombie.
I mean, technically, the monster is a living
Creature.
human creature.
Yeah.
with whatever abilities it has, strength, longevity, it seems to have.
Don't give it a supercharge of electricity.
But anyway, so we've got into our nice movie genre now, haven't
Yes.
we?
Yeah.
So around that time, we had White Zombie, 1932. But it wasn't until 1968, so several years later, that zombies acquired a cult following of their own with the release of, as we mentioned, Night of the Living Dead, directed by George A. Romero. So over the next 15 years, so it's into the 80s,
Barbara.
we're coming to get you, Barbara. Romero directed 2 more zombie films, Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead.
I love Dawn of the Dead.
So it's kind of an unofficial trilogy-ish?
Kind of. They're kind of connected by name only.
I know.
Yeah.
Zach, you've really got the kind of like the storyboard of these zombie films, haven't you?
There's kind of like a multiverse of the Dead films. It's quite crazy.
So after those 3 kind of main films, obviously as special effects technology improved with each film, the zombies appeared more gruesome and realistic. Obviously, when we see the zombies in Night of the Living Dead, they're very much just people with kind of white makeup on. They're not got...
And it's black and white.
Yeah, they don't really have kind of body parts missing or like flesh exposed or anything. It's just kind of
slow walking.
Yeah, they're just lumbering around.
Yeah. So obviously as technology and special effects improved, we got more kind of gruesome and realistic versions of zombies.
I think that's movie making. You want to, in the movies, you want to keep ramping it up a little bit more, don't you?
Yeah. So from the 1980s on, dozens of, obviously nearly countless zombie films have been made. So
yeah, because didn't we watch Dawn of the Dead the other day?
We did. We watched the extended can cut, which I've not seen before.
They're kind of like blue.
Yeah, but it's very much, as we said about the special effects improvement over that time, they're very different zombies to the ones in Night of the Living Dead because, for one, when they get shot, there's lots of spurts of blood and kind of body parts coming off, and it's very much more of a kind of global thing by that point.
Well, I do find that in zombie films, they kind of do have this bounce between the supernatural and the, if you want, scientific reason
like
for
infections
and viruses or whatever, because the split down the middle for me is, if you have something which is supernatural, this is when you get, say, Night of the Living Dead, where the chemicals, that was from the chemicals, wasn't Night of the Living Dead? Return of the Living Dead.
Oh yeah, Return of the Living
Dead.
Funnily enough,
yeah.
Kind of an offshoot from.
Yeah. So Return of the Living, so many Living Deads. The Return of the Living Dead, when they're in the graveyard.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got a chemical which gets into the atmosphere. It rains. The rain, then anybody that gets touched by it becomes kind of contaminated, but it also soaks into the graveyard, and that's when you're getting not only reanimated corpses, but you're getting reanimated skeletons. That's one thing I've never quite worked out, because you've got skeletons which don't actually have any muscle tissue to them that can move around, and that actually was reflected in World War Z, which is another movie I worked on. But World War Z, there's a scene in that where I think they burnt bodies in a room.
It's also a great book as well.
I love the book. But there's a hand on the floor, some fingers, but they're still twitching, but they've got there's no,
so severed limbs and still alive.
Yeah, so it's no tendons. It's not connected to a brainstem, obviously, but so the whole of the flesh seems to be alive, if you see what I mean. The whole of the
whole thing, and if you cut off like an arm or a leg,
they're still twitching.
It still goes. Has that drive.
Still have that drive
to kind of eat something.
Whereas
somehow.
If you're watching like the TV series Walking Dead, as soon as you destroy the brain,
lop something off,
they're down.
It's gone.
Do you think with the rising popularity of these zombie films since the 1980s has come with the whole, as we said earlier, the conversation starter of what you would do in a zombie apocalypse? The survival side of things has obviously come with that. How do you think we got to that point? Is it just purely through the films we've kind of become obsessed with learning about how to survive zombie apocalypse?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a prepper. I prep, but that's not. Don't get that wrong. I don't have a bunker full of AK-47s and waiting for the fall down of society just so
that
I can
does
live
sound quite nice.
in a post-apocalyptic Mad Max society. We're not going to get into prepping at the moment, but there are preppers out there that are like that, and a lot of preppers that literally you get the impression when you read some of the things in social media that they are literally prepping for the zombie apocalypse. They can't wait.
Seems a very specific scenario.
Well, that leads me into a segment I thought we could do.
Okay.
Where
I'm enjoying this. I like this.
So I've come up with 3 would you rather questions regarding
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, come on. This is getting good now.
your kind of perception of how you would survive a zombie apocalypse.
Right, well, I need to have my Ladybird book of the zombie apocalypse
use the
tucked in my
zombie
pocket.
So discuss as you will.
Okay.
So first question.
First question. Is this to everybody?
This is to both of you.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
and I'll
okay.
give my
You're the
opinion.
questions master.
Would you rather
Okay.
share supplies with someone and risk running out, or hoard your supplies and be alone for the duration of the zombie
Oh,
apocalypse?
that's an interesting question. It depends on the person, I reckon.
Yeah.
Are they a useful
Depends who
person?
you get
Can I
stuck with.
utilise their skills for my own survival?
honestly, that's a question, Jack, that comes up so often on these preppers' Facebook pages and
Yeah.
social media, because it doesn't have to be a zombie apocalypse. It's just like if I'm going to excuse my French, but if we hit a shit hit the fan situation scenario, that's what is the usual term is used. People say, if you have somebody knocking at your door, what are you going to do? And that's literally what you've just said. And it really comes down to what you just said, Zach, was do they offer
Any help? Yeah.
any help? Because you could find yourself, with a dead weight.
Yeah. Well, we've seen it in a small way with the rise of obviously COVID and everything about that, and everyone hoarding supplies for other people.
Yeah.
We've kind of seen
The toilet roll fiasco.
The
Yeah.
toilet roll. I didn't quite get that.
We've seen a scary view
if you
into
buy
the future.
if you buy on one hand so much toilet roll, and on the other hand you buy so much pasta, white pasta. By the time you've eaten all that pasta, you're not going to need the toilet roll. You're going to be so bunged up. I don't know. It's a very awkward one because,
Lots of variations.
human nature sort of, again, maybe it's one of those things that it's depicted often where you open your door to people and before you know it, they've taken advantage.
Yeah, if they've had good intentions or not.
And
Did they want to trick you into
They
giving your
want to
stuff
trick
to
you.
them?
There's a video which I'm sure you can find it on YouTube, which was about an apocalyptic scenario. I think it's London based, and this man has been hoarding. I don't like saying hoarding because when you're a prepper, you're not hoarding. I mean,
Supplying.
our grandparents and their grandparents and everybody was preppers. People, what is prepping? Prepping is getting your fruit in the autumn, turn it into jam and preserves, and filling your larder with it. It's pickling things to preserve it. It's human beings for the majority
Gathering.
majority of over history have always gathered food, preserved it, and collect it, because you don't know when you're going to be on a lean time, and especially when you eat seasonally. Then when it comes to winter, a lot of the time you'd have these big like winter Christmas feasts, things like that, where you basically gorge yourself on all the stuff that's not going to last, and then you have all the prep that you've kept to keep you going over winter. So prepping isn't a mad thing, but most people these days live, coming back to your question, they live in a 24/7. I can go shopping 24/7 and get my food. So very few people stock up their food larders anymore. But they don't need to, do they? You can order online and get your food in. You can do this because so if you've got a scenario like we're talking about zombie apocalypse. So this is completely, that's what we're focusing on this. So let's talk zombie apocalypse. You probably find a lot of people would be caught out with very little when it comes to food supplies, probably medical supplies and all sorts of things like that. If you don't get caught out because you've had a mind to just have supplies, because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I lived through the 70s where we had the miners' strikes, we had blackouts. So we always made sure we had good stock of candles. We had an open fire in the lounge. We used to cook our meals on the open fire because we didn't have any electricity and we didn't have gas at the time. So having those preps meant we had food in the house that we could eat We could cook. We could do stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people can't do that these days. The whole house runs on electricity. If the power goes out, can't cook. Got no heating. Can't boil water. And if you can't go on the internet to order some food, I don't know. So if you've suddenly got this position where people are desperately, that's when you have a situation, don't you? In this zombie apocalypse scenarios, usually those people that are unprepared, preying on other people to take their stuff. So it's a very difficult question to ask. You're put in a position at the time, somebody knocks on your door and says, help me, help me, help me. It's down to whether you are...
I think it would have to be, the rare exceptions, yes.
Also, the way the question's phrased as well, it's, would you rather share your supplies with someone else and risk running out, or hoard your supplies and be completely alone? So you're alone for this duration.
Right, it's alone. Okay.
Well, we're talking we're talking about in a zombie apocalypse.
Yes, yeah.
So the zombies are out there. They're roaming the streets. We don't know. We haven't specified whether they're Romero zombies or whether they're 28 days later zombies, which makes a difference because there could be strength in numbers.
Right.
If you've got other pair of hands, somebody will watch your back.
Do they have hands?
Somebody will watch your back. Somebody that you can go on supply runs with, things like that. So they could be handy.
Very much depends on who it is.
On what situation you find yourself in the first place.
Fair enough.
It's a very complex question.
Okay, fair enough.
An answer.
I mean, you might be in a position where you'd be really pleased to have somebody because they are, medically trained, for example.
I think it'd have to be exceptional circumstances for me to kind of warrant helping someone if I didn't know them.
If you didn't know them.
If I knew them,
well,
then I'd be more...
specify whether it could be your family members that you can't share.
Then yes, I would.
There we go. Okay, well, that's pretty unanswerable.
Really,
what about you, Jack?
Or if you're really pushed, I would say if you're really pushed, the extra food.
Oh, cannibalism.
You get really pushed, you see.
Yeah.
If your supplies are running out, you might say,
come in, you can have some. And
let's just follow the little trail of chocolates.
Ooh, a piece of candy.
Ooh,
Stand
piece
there
of
with
candy.
a comically large salt and pepper and a handkerchief around your neck.
That's it.
Giant knife and fork.
And a large mallet.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
What about you, Jack?
What about you?
I'd be gone by that point. I think I'd be dead. So I'm not very good at surviving.
No, he'd be dead, so he couldn't be. He wouldn't.
You can eat me.
He wouldn't let us in.
He would let us in.
Okay, question 2. Should we go on to question 2?
Question two.
Yeah.
This might be a little bit easier to answer. I don't know. Okay, so would you rather try to find the cure for the zombie virus, or focus on surviving until someone else finds a cure?
I'll focus on surviving.
That could be years, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, if you're going to take it as a reality zombie apocalypse, whatever type of zombie they are, you just got to last it out.
I think it'd make life a lot simpler.
What if everyone did the same and you never find the cure?
Well, if you never find the cure, I suppose you've got to again look at what type of zombie apocalypse we're in, because if you're talking Walking Dead zombie apocalypse, then, spoilers, if you're alive, you have actually been infected anyway.
Yeah.
And if you die, you're going to become a zombie regardless. So really what you're doing in that scenario is just trying to live as long as you can, as happy as you can. But you're going to eventually become a zombie regardless.
Yeah. But in your supernatural instances, there wouldn't be a cure.
There might be a magical book or something.
I mean,
Evil Dead style.
I suppose what I was trying to point out there, in the Walking Dead scenario, you can't wait it out for the world to become zombie free, because as long as there are people alive, they will eventually become zombies. So you're going to always keep getting this.
Maybe we should have specified what zombies they were
I don't
before I
know.
asked these questions.
But if you're talking about a zombie apocalypse where if you could literally stop zombies from biting people and outweight them to die from basically
malnutrition.
28 days later.
Slowly, the necrotic flesh falling apart, and that's it. They're dead.
Yeah.
They're dead. Are now dead.
Dead.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. When you kill a zombie, do you kill them because they're already dead? So I don't know. Can you kill something that's already
ending
dead?
them?
It's a bit philosophical now.
If they are the living dead, but they're dead, so they can't be living, you're not really killing them, are you? You're stopping them. Let's put it
I'm
down.
confused.
So you're, so,
So hang on.
you're focusing on surviving.
I think surviving because, well, firstly, I'm not a medical practitioner. I don't have any scientific equipment to find
You're picking
a
these
cure.
questions apart a lot more. Than
To find a cure. So it's really, just wait it out.
I think it'd be fun.
Just
Fair
wait it. Well, yeah.
If it was like not an airborne virus, otherwise it'd be less fun.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
it was airborne virus, then you got a lot of problems.
COVID-20.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. We're pretty kind of.
Was that question too?
So that was,
Yeah.
I think our universal answer on that one was wait it out.
Wait it out. Fair enough.
Oh, we go down to the Winchester and wait for it all to blow over.
That's it.
Okay, third and final question.
Oh, another one.
Do you stay in one place for the duration of the zombie apocalypse, or travel around from place to place?
Now, what?
Right.
There's kind of we
Now, this-
kind of had this situation when we watched Dawn of the Dead, didn't we? Because they
Yeah.
kind of famously they hold up in a shopping mall, and then they
Mhm.
eventually get cocky and start to venture out, and that's when everything starts to go wrong. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
There's a big group of people and lots of different personalities at work, didn't you? That. Right. Okay. So interesting question. And coming from the prepper's perspective, in the world of the prepper, you have two scenarios: bugging in or bugging out. And a lot of the time, people would suggest the best thing to do is do bug in. You know where you are, you know what your resources are, you have them there. If you can fortify where you are, that's great. Bugging out can be a lot more risky. But then it depends on whether you've already... See, it depends on the country you're in as well. We live in England, so we do live in England, but let's take Great Britain as a whole. England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland. We're only a small couple of islands. You know, you've got the British mainland, you've got Ireland. You can't really bug out easily, because if you have a huge exodus of people coming out of all the major cities, the whole of the countryside, anywhere and everywhere, is just going to get flooded with people regardless. So unlike if you, say, lived in America with so much space that you can go and bug out to a place where probably nobody's going to find you or come across you, you've got a better chance to survive if you bugged out. But what you need to do is have your bug in plan, and then a lot of the people, I know that they would have particular sites that they might bug out to, where they would then have already pre-planned to say, if everything kicks off, I've got a better and more secure place to go to, and I know how long it's going to take me to get there, and I'm going to bug out to that place for my security over bugging in. And again, it comes down to where you are, because if you live in the middle of London, or you live in a tower block, you can bug in, you can barricade yourself in, but then you've got all sorts of issues about water supply,
Water, food,
and all the other things. If you've got in the countryside,
say we're from a farm.
in a farm, then you're more remote. You're probably most definitely to bug in, but there's nothing to say that at some point you're going to get descended upon by other humans which are trying to get out of the cities, etc., that are looking for...
Kind of almost want to feel like you want to blend into plain sight and just kind of get lost in the crowd of things happening.
Yeah, I suppose buy a bunker.
Buy a bunker. Hide underground.
Hide underground.
Day of the Dead style.
Oh yeah, that's another good movie.
Another film, I Am Legend.
Ooh, yeah.
I've just opened this book
Hang
here.
on,
that we have
I
in the
Am
studio.
Legend based on the Amiga Man, yeah?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about the Will Smith movie.
Yeah, I Am Legend, yeah.
Yeah, which is... I mean, the Amiga Man was the same, came first as far as movies are concerned, with Charlton Heston. Did we answer your question, by the way?
Yes, I think so.
I wonder, you're not falling asleep.
In a roundabout way. No, I've picked up this book that we had in the studio, and there is some information about zombies in here, specifically from the film I Am Legend.
Right.
It's interesting. I didn't really think of them kind of as zombies. They were kind of like vampires as well, because they were susceptible to sunlight.
It does actually say here, Will Smith stars in the 2007 movie I Am Legend, based on a 1954 book with the same name written by Richard Matheson. 2 other movies have been based on the novel The Last Man on Earth and The Omega Man.
Yeah, the Omega Man.
There we go.
Yeah. I can't remember. Did they eat people in that film?
I think they mentioned something about did they have some kind of cancer? They were cancerous. zombies, I believe. The virus makes an infected person or dog's gums bleed.
Ooh.
Their pupils become dilated and clumps of their hair fall out almost instantly.
Nice.
There's a very, very lovely picture of a zombie roaring
Yes.
in this.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that now? Which movie it was that? Oh, there was one where they strap a corpse to a table and ask the zombie why.
Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, it's the Return of the Living Dead. Yeah, I thought it was. But they asked why do they want to keep eating brains?
Because they could talk in that.
Yeah, and it was because death was so painful. They like almost like the zombie is in continual pain, but when they're eating brain, it takes away that pain for the time that they've got brain tissue to eat.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that was why they were charging around all over the place trying to eat people's brains.
Yeah, and they could use like equipment and technology. They kept calling in more people to come and help.
That's it. They were getting the
paramedics.
The paramedics. Send more paramedics.
Send more cops.
It's interesting in that book it was saying about the ones from I Am Legend of vampire zombies.
Yeah,
that
they're
kind of
vampire zombies.
That kind of posed a question in my head though, with something like Dracula or Nosferatu or any vampire. If you're bitten and then turned into a vampire, is that kind of under the umbrella of zombie?
Ooh.
I don't think so, because you got to go back to your.
It's also kind of supernatural.
Yeah, but it is. It's supernatural, vampire, supernatural, of course. But you've got to go back to your original definition of a zombie being just an animated, almost slave-like corpse that does the bidding of the person who's reanimated.
Well, Dracula doesn't age either, does he?
No.
Although Dracula being, you'd consider in the folklore that Dracula being the controlling vampire can control people that he's...
He can hypnotise, he can make them zombies.
Before
he bites them.
But when he's bitten somebody and they become a zombie, technically he's in control of them as well, isn't he? He can make them through his will do what he wants them to do.
He's got his brides and everything.
Yeah, it's always if you kill the alpha vampire, then the rest of them stop being a vampire. I can't. They're so
we're gonna have to have a vampire.
We'll have to have a vampire
now.
one, and
coming soon.
It's coming soon. A vampire and a werewolf. I insist on having a werewolf one in that case.
Okay, lycanthropes.
Yeah. So what have we learned? Oh, zombies. Great. So okay, I'm going to pose a question now. In a zombie apocalypse, what would be your go-to weapon of choice?
Oh.
Cricket bat.
Cricket bat.
Cricket bat.
Let's think. Well, obviously you'd look at heavy weaponry as kind of firepower, sort of guns and machine guns, that sort of thing.
I think it depends where we are.
Yeah. Again, it comes back to the type of zombies, because they've ramped them up, haven't they? 28 days later, they were literally... That was the rage virus, wasn't it? The rage virus.
What's the chimpanzee infected with? Rage.
And it really makes people move fast and...
Rage.
Basically, rage. Opposed, shall I say, to your more slower...
I would prefer
plodding.
to have the slower zombies.
Yeah.
As an apocalypse.
I always remember the remake of Night of the Living Dead, where the lady was... Do you remember the lady that was in that? And she kept insisting in the house, because they were trapped in a house, and she said, they're really slow. We could just leave, and I'm sure we could just get by them, and nobody would listen to her. They're all boarding up the windows and trying to say, right, our last place to survive is to get into the cellar, and they have an argument.
And the cellar or upstairs.
Yeah, cellar or upstairs. And but the woman's going, but they're really slow. I'm sure we can just get past them. And as you would probably just go, clonk, clonk. Well, you get that in The Walking Dead, don't you, where they just keep whapping them as they get close.
On the subject of zombie films, what is your favourite zombie film?
Oh.
What's your go-to zombie film, I should say?
Well, I must say, you have already mentioned Day of the Dead, and I do... not Day of the
I know
Dawn,
mine.
Dawn,
I know
Dawn of
mine.
the Dead.
I know mine. We haven't mentioned it yet. I know mine.
Can I say it?
Hang on. Hang on. Sonny, I wasn't expecting that question, so I've got this huge flood.
Should we answer the first question first? What was the weapon?
What was your weapon of choice?
Machine gun.
Broadsword.
Very close.
Yeah.
If it's blood related, if it's transmitted via blood, you don't want to be cutting into it because you'll get blood in your mouth.
But then you're limited on your ammunition, especially
especially
in the UK.
I don't plan to survive very long.
What did you choose?
A machine gun.
And
What
do
type
you
of
have a
machine
machine gun?
No.
Do you know where to get a machine gun?
Do you know where to get
I
bullets?
wasn't expecting
Can
this
you-
question. Okay.
No.
Okay, I'll go back to my original answer of a cricket bat. There we go.
There you
Cricket
go.
man.
Short of the dead still.
And I won't last very long.
Yeah, I mean, oh man, I think about two. Yeah, a sword.
Go on, you know what
Sword,
it is.
But I do like a glaive.
Hey, he said it.
A glaive is
It's-
basically a sword on a stick.
On
Yeah.
a bigger stick.
On a bigger stick. Not so good in closed quarters.
That's
I was
why.
gonna
That's
say.
why I went broadsword.
Yeah. But when you've got them at distance,
You get blood in your mouth. I won't be
yeah, I
anywhere
mean,
near you.
I
If you're standing on like a wall or something, you can stab them in the
yeah,
face.
yeah. Well, pointy stick will do that. I mean, I love my,
basically a
I love
pointy
my,
stick.
I love my English quarterstaff. But you give me a glaive, and those zombies would be going down
Left, right, and centre.
right and centre. Literally, I'd be out there having fun. I'd be like, right, go. What am I doing this afternoon? Right,
Let's go for the clear up.
let's go to some clearing. Yeah. So okay, that was the weapons bit. I'm sure everybody that's listening has got their own helps. But
Comment below
that-
your zombie weapon.
zombie weapons. But again, listeners, that's going to be where you live, because in the UK, our gun laws are such that we don't, unless you're going to shoot somebody with an
You
air
didn't
pistol.
say it was like something I had.
you know.
You just asked me what my favourite go-to weapon
Yeah,
was.
I know, but I've tried to put a bit of realism. You did ask about whether we'd let people in, you know.
Yeah,
So
I,
in the UK,
I think we'd be all right in here, to be honest. If you,
Just in
You
the
see-
sound studio.
yeah, if you
Just
see
if it's-
pictures of the sound studio, I think we'll actually be quite okay in here.
yeah.
gets
Let me
very hot,
just
though.
say how much flesh you got on your jack. Yeah, okay. You keep this going for a couple of weeks.
Knew
How
I'd be the first to
how are
go.
we going to cook him?
Oh,
Oh,
well.
we're cooking enough in here already.
We'll have to go sushi style.
Yes, so my personal... Sorry, going back to my
Yep.
question. My personal favourite zombie film is probably a film by Peter Jackson.
Oh, damn it! You're gonna beat me to
It's
it.
because I said, wasn't it?
Yeah,
one of
then
his,
suddenly you flickered.
One of
Go
his
on.
earlier films.
We'll give it to
known
you, Jack.
as- One of his earlier films, known as Brain Dead.
Yeah, that's
Yay.
it. So we're all
Brain dead.
brain dead.
If you haven't,
literally, we're all brain dead.
Yeah. Listeners, if you haven't seen that film yet, definitely track it down
yeah.
and watch it. 'Cause it's
I
fantastic.
kick ass for the Lord.
Hey!
It is a really good fun film.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's probably my favourite zombie movie from the perspective of it's this over the top silly gore
Yes.
and its humour.
Very
the comedy
yeah,
through
yeah.
it and the baby.
Super gory.
And the practical effects are brilliant as
Yeah,
well.
practical effect. The baby is hilarious.
Didn't it have like the world record for most amount of blood used on one set
You
or
know.
something?
But it's interesting how we've got from, as we were saying earlier, the kind of voodoo side of things
Mm.
and the ancient Greeks obviously weighing their corpses down to a film like Brain Dead. And
Brain
you think
Dead.
on the family tree somewhere that does link back.
Yeah, because
It's just-
it's the rat monkey in that one, isn't it?
It's the rat monkey, yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of, it's from a rat monkey, Sumatran rat monkey from Skull Island.
That was actually from Skull Island.
Yeah, it says at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen the movie in years, but it is such a fun movie.
We know what we're doing after this then.
I just find it interesting how we've got from that kind of voodoo magical side of things where, to be honest, in places like West Africa, it probably is quite a serious thing.
I would dare say that there are cultures that still are scared.
Yeah, and we're obviously laughing at a comedy film that's based on the same thing. I just find it interesting how it's evolved over time and
Yeah.
different cultures. It's a very different
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, so I think...
What have we learned?
What have we learnt? Well, we've learnt the origins of zombie. We've learnt, how people actually did fear the Walking Dead
Yes.
and tried to stop
Yeah.
them coming back. We've discovered what we would do in a zombie apocalypse.
Eat me, yeah.
Oh no.
I've learnt who my real friends are.
We've learned about what weapons we'd use.
Well, that actually answered the other question. We've let him in, haven't we? We've let him in.
Wow. We'll get a couple of more podcasts out of him first.
Yeah, although I don't think I've got room in the sound studio to swing a glaive. And he's not packing a machine gun on him, so we're all right. So, yeah, no, that's great. So,
That's what you call it.
so listeners, if you want to put in the comments anything that we've missed out on, anything you would like us to come back on in a further episode or anything like that, please comment,
Yes, I'd like to hear everyone's favourite zombie film as well.
Yeah, your favourite zombie film. Or even your favourite type of zombie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
again, the films cover so many different types.
The 28 Days Later zombies always used to scare me
They are the scary
because they are
ones.
so fast.
Well, they were reminiscent to the Hungries, weren't they? The
Yeah,
Hungries were running around everywhere in
And they're
girls.
suddenly switched on.
Yeah,
when-
suddenly switched on, so there was that danger zone. But that was because one was man-made virus, and the other one was back to nature again,
Yeah.
a fungal infection, like athlete's foot.
What a way to end.
What a way to end it. Don't catch athlete's foot. If you get it, go see it. Go ask your GP for some cream.
Or chain yourself up.
You don't know where it's going to go.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below any suggestions of topics or activities you'd like to listen to in future episodes.
And that's a goodbye from Buzz.
Goodbye from Jack.
And goodbye from Zach.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Now we know show.
Now we know.
I thought everyone was going to join in, but they didn't.
No.
Now I feel silly.
Oh well. Bye. Just say goodbye. Bye.
Goodbye.
And, we wish you well in the zombie apocalypse.
Brains.